Hello, my friends. I'm going to share with you a tutorial that I wrote on how to use S3 in CloudFront, and in particular, how to use S3 for two of the most common use cases. Now, I apologize, my camera is over here, but my third screen is over there, so you're going to be looking at my ear for most of this video. With that, let me go ahead and share screen number 3. All right, we should be in business if all is going well. Okay, so I called this Lab 1 S3 in CloudFormation. Some of the purposes are to create a private S3 bucket and create a public S3 bucket and use a public S3 bucket as a website and to distribute the public website using CloudFront. Oh, that's funny that I said CloudFormation there. I'll go ahead and edit that right on the fly. Okay, anyway, that's a little embarrassing. Okay. All right. So the context is that there's a company, any big corporation, in this case, the fictional Paradise Donut Company, and in one case they have a bunch of private information that they don't want to share publicly, and it's common that when you have a whole bunch of files that you're not going to be accessing a lot, but that you need an archive of them, that you package up sometimes many gigabytes, even terabytes worth of data into a single file, and you upload it to object storage with our cloud providers. But you want that to be secret and private, and you don't want anyone to get access to it except for you. And then secondly, another way that object storage in the cloud, such as S3 is used, is to host public websites. So we're gonna go through both of those. Here is a graphic depiction of that. So you've got a corporation that uploads some private secret data in very large files that they want to store and archive. And then use case number 2 is you have a people on the regular web and they're accessing a website in a public bucket and they access it through correctly named CloudFront. You can go directly to the bucket. It's just that you get more throughput if you go through it, not going directly to the bucket, but instead to through CloudFront. All right, so let's go ahead and start with creating an S3 bucket. So I'm going to come over here and make this a little bigger. And I'll type in S3. And I want to type in create bucket. And I'm noting that I'm in the region Virginia. So this bucket is going to have the highest throughput, the lowest delays or latency with respect to people accessing it closer to the eastern United States, northeastern. So I say create bucket, and let's go ahead and just look at the instructions. Your bucket names need to be unique with respect to the area that you are working in. And so one way to make your bucket a unique name is to do something like that. So, and when I say something like that, what I mean is call it private logs and then put the date in there somehow. So I'll say 1 and then your initials. So there we go. I don't think I need to do anything else. So that's what I'm planning to do. We can note some of the other options here. So I'm going to go down. Bucket versioning is disabled. We don't want to pay for extra storage. Let's see, advanced. It's going to be encrypted at rest. All of the data that's put in there. Let's see. Oh, this was important. Because we are planning as part of our use case to have all of our data private, this is by default, but we want to block all public access to this bucket. All right, so with that, I think that we can just go ahead and click on create bucket. And for those that are doing this as part of one of my courses, you're supposed to tell me what is the name of the bucket. All right, let's look at the bucket details. You can see what region it's in, its access description, and the date the bucket was created. Let's look at that. So it was created in US East 1, and we can see um, the date that it was created, and I guess that's all the details we can see for now, at least on this page. Cool, cool. All right, let's click on the hyperlink and it'll show us that there is nothing in it. So we click on that, and this is where a list of our files, also called objects, would be stored. And we can click upload or upload if we want to upload something. All right, let's go ahead and then emulate creating something private. So imagine if you had some firewall logs. You don't really want to share those with the entire world, but maybe if it turns out in the future someday that you've been hacked, you might want a history of this to look at later. So when it comes to firewall logs and things of that nature, they generate an insane amount of storage space, not space, but storage utilization. And so what I've done here is I've said create two different files, like call process1.log and process2.log as two hypothetical log files that you're going to merge into one object file that you're going to upload to S3. All right, so the way that I did that is I created a folder called S3 Lab, and let me find that. So I created that on my computer, and with my S3 Lab, uh, there are two files in there, and the way that I did that was I just said, anyway, you could just do it in a Word file, like anything is fine. So I just created two files, and then I used the text from this lab to copy and paste in some text. The next step that it's going to say to do is to zip it up into one file, and we'll call it top secret. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So highlight, right click, and I can select compress on a Mac. There's other things you can do on a PC. So the high level idea here is, you could have thousands of logs and they might take up a terabyte of space and you don't want to upload them individually. You just want to basically archive them. So you put them all in one big file and then you're planning to upload it. Okay, so there's a couple ways I could upload it. I'll go and let's see, I'll click upload and it's gonna say you can drag and drop. So I'm just gonna do that rather than having you watch me browse through my file directory. And it's ready to be uploaded. And I don't think I'm going to change any settings, but let me just double check according to my instructions. You upload it and it says to note the properties. So by default, we're going to store this as standard storage. So remember the use case that we're looking at right now, which is that we're planning on archiving something and not using it as a website. And when it comes to archiving, there's actually more efficient and less expensive ways to do things. And so that's what all of these options are about. Um, there's also some issues related to and features related to how redundantly your data is backed up essentially. So do you want it stored in like three places or one place, etc. Um, there's some rules here about if you store it in certain ways, how long they're asking you to save it. So let's see. And it looks like you have to have like minimum sizes if you're going to be using certain types of storage. At any rate, as I look down the list, these like Glacier ones are really meant for things that you're going to be storing for like really not ever planning to ever access again, possibly. And so you get cheaper storage rates for using those. So you can look up the fees associated with each one of them. For our case, we'll just go with default initially, which is fine. And I believe we just click upload and off it goes. If I were to click on my folder link again, we see that there's a file there and it has the standard storage class or the default one. All right, so it asks a question related to that. What is the storage class that we're using? How big is our file? Again, just to verify that you're doing this, if you're doing this for my class, we get to see where it's at. There it is in the list of objects. Okay, in the lower right, there is a URL when we're looking at this file. So go ahead, let's click on this link. So now we're looking at properties related to this particular object. And as we go down there, this thing is supposed to be secret. And yet here is what looks like a public URL for this. So if we click on it and open it up, it does say that access is denied. So confusingly, it generates what looks like a public link, but because you said block all access when you created this bucket, this is currently not available to the wide world at large. Okay, so I want you to note the encryption. Let's see, is that listed somewhere on this page? Hopefully we can find that. We've got storage class. Data is encrypted at rest. And just so there's really, when you're talking about storage, storing things, especially secret things, you're really thinking about encryption in two different moments. One is at rest, so somebody were to just get access to this file somehow by physically accessing the server that this is on, like maybe not through your account, but they actually broke into a data center and stole the hard drive. Your data at rest is technically encrypted, and it can only be unencrypted with a key. And likely they would not have that because it's not going to be stored on the same machine where your physical hard drive of data is at. But then the other way of getting at your data is in transit. And so because you typically are accessing your bucket over HTTPS, people shouldn't be able to, internet service providers, et cetera, should not be able to view any of your data being uploaded from you via HTTPS to and from their the S3 server. So it's encrypted at rest and it's also encrypted in transit. All right, so we noted some of the nice things. Storage is great for frequently accessed files, but you pay more for storage if you're doing that. Let's go ahead and change it to Glacier Deep Archive. And so let's go ahead and do that. Storage class, standard, edit. And let's go to Deep Archive. It's funny how it says minimum storage duration. I've never actually noticed that before. But I'm gonna go ahead and click Save Changes. And there it goes. And so now if I were to, it's stored in deep. Okay, let's see what it looks like now. It says storage class, Glacier Deep Archive. If I were to go back up here to my breadcrumb URL, I click on here, I see top secret file, and it is in Deep Archive. So again, I'm not planning to access it really ever. It's for archiving, and that's why I'm using the cheaper storage class. All right, so that's there. And so now we've really completed this example of using a private storage bucket, and this is, you know, a common use case that I've given you an example of. Now let's go ahead and clean up. And so what we're going to do, let's see, there's a couple different ways we can do this. Basically, whenever you're cleaning up buckets, you have to empty the bucket and then delete the parent bucket. So one of the ways that we can do that is just click on this and say delete. And yes, we'll say permanently delete objects. Okay, now it's empty. And so now we go back to our list of buckets and we click this. And so this is how we could have emptied it before deleting it, but you can't delete it while it has stuff in it. Let's just see if I have one that has stuff in it. This one has stuff in it. So hypothetically, if I were to go delete, it says this bucket's not empty. So just kind of showing you an example of that. All right, but this one is empty because we just deleted the one file. So delete, and it makes, it's interesting in AWS, every single time you do a delete uh, in their interface, there's always a different thing you're supposed to type. It's delete or delete me, or you type in the name of the thing you're deleting. Like it's every single time you do a delete, it's always something different. It's never consistent. Um, I figure they've got thousands and thousands of tech employees, but it's kind of funny that they're not all on the same page. Okay, so we have deleted that bucket and we have finished with that use case. All right, now let's go on to use case number 2, which is creating a public website. All right, so with that one, we'll call this a public, well, we'll call it the PDC website and add in some things related to the date. So it says, go create a new bucket, paste that in, unclick the block all access, and then click create. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We click create bucket. We paste this in, and so this is a unique bucket name with respect to this region. And from that, I'm going to unclick this. Now, if you remember in the last example, there was a URL that showed up for files that were put in the bucket. You would think that unclicking this all by itself would make that link work, but no, there's kind of like 2 layers of permissions that you have to set in order to make things publicly accessible. So anyway, just an FYI, but this is one of the things that we have to unclick. And by the way, it seems like whenever there's like a major breach of S3 data in the news, which happens all the time, it's always because somebody has a non-private bucket and bad guys are getting access to it. So people make mistakes with this all the time. Obviously, if it's a private bucket, just leave it private. If it's public, make it public. If it's private, make it private, and then don't mix the two. Okay, create bucket. Oops. Oh, you have to click the I acknowledge that I am going to do something, which could put me in the news if there's something that should not be revealed in there and it gets out. All right, so you're aware that you have made a public bucket. So know what you're doing, because that's a mistake that is so common. All right. Another thing we want to do is to set this up as a website. We need to enable static website hosting, and this is going to be under properties of the bucket. And there's a link down somewhere in there to enable that. So let's go ahead and click on this link, and we go to properties, and we scroll around, usually at the bottom, and we click edit, and we're going to click enable. And usually when you type in a website, let's just say you type in google.com, you don't type in google.com/index.html, but the web servers always inherently check for a default page. And so you're supposed to say, like, what is the default page that I want you to serve up out of this website that's going to be based out of your bucket. And so you specify what is the page by default it should look for. And it gave you some suggestions that you should use. All right, let's see what we've got. So I'm telling you here, enable host a static website, index.html error, save changes, confirm. All right, so nothing else. Boing. Okay, so we've done this, and now if we go back to the bottom, so we were up here looking at our bucket, and under properties, there is now a regular looking, well, quasi-regular looking URL that ends in .com that in theory you could click on, but there's nothing in there yet. And there's another security thing that we need to fix. So let's find out what we need to do next. but we do have a URL. Okay, so for me, the weirdest thing about enabling web capabilities is doing this weird JSON document that formally and finally makes this thing publicly accessible. And so this is, you can just look it up anytime you want. You can just type in just go into the web and say, enable S3 bucket for websites. And anytime you do that, it's always going to show you this block of text right here that you're supposed to use. And where are you supposed to use it? Again, well, okay, we had properties before. Now we're going to go under permissions. So let's go back to here. Here's our bucket. Here's permissions. And here's where it says bucket policy. Not really editable yet until you click edit. And then we will paste in that block of JSON. And then right here, you're supposed to type in the bucket name. And I can't remember if it's the full thing, including the ARN or not. Let me just double check here. Yeah, it's the full thing, including the ARN. So that's why they put it up here. So you can just copy that. Now, when you paste, don't paste over that /* What this is saying is everything in this bucket, so / everything in it, make it so that basically anybody in the world, anybody in the world can read the information that's in there. That's what the get object means. Anyway, it's a little weird. At any rate, this is the last change you need to do. You click Save Changes, and now it should be a publicly accessible website. You saw that I clicked the link before. I'll just do it again for giggles. If I right-click and say Open, so before it said access denied because we hadn't done that bucket thing, the permission things. Now it says no key found, and what it was looking for is index.html. So it is working as a website now, but there's no file in there. So we'll remedy that relatively quickly. Okay, so let's go back down here. Let's create ourselves a web page, and I'm suggesting that you create an index.html page. So here's a file. And previously, I had this S3 lab folder, and I put a couple log files in there. Let me create another one. I'll call this index.html, and I'll paste in this text. And then the next thing it says is create an error.html file. So I'm going to grab that text. Error.html. All right, those are ready to go. And then it says upload each file to, which you should know how to do at this point. So we go back to the objects tab and we say upload. And I am going to find that folder again. And I will drag on index. And I will drag on error. And then I will upload them. They are there. And so here's the page, here's the URL from before, what that said that index.html was missing, but it should be there now. So if I reload, there it is. Yay! So by default, it pulled up index.html. And then if I just go / and just type in some nonsense, it should pull up the error.html page. We're sorry, the page you're looking for appears to be missing. And that is actually a page that we just wrote. It says, we're sorry, the page that you're looking for appears to be missing. So we saw an example of visiting a targeted file as well as an error message, a catch-all for just about anything else. So this website is meant for serving up static files. So if you need something dynamic, then you would typically use like little JavaScript calls in there that would go out and hit an API if you were doing website hosting in this fashion. All right, so we've tested those two things. Now, I don't know if this has changed much, but historically, this way of hosting supports about 5,500 page views per second, which is fine for most websites. Now, there's some caveats to it, but just roughly speaking, if you're talking about a single file in that's index.html, you could serve that up about 5,500 times per second. If you're getting more traffic than that, then you need other means. So for most people, this will be fine. But another disadvantage, perhaps, about just sticking with this would be that this is done with respect to the region in which the bucket is created in. So if you're accessing this from maybe Japan or from Australia, then you're going to get a little bit of latency when accessing these pages, and you can kill two birds with one stone by using CloudFront. And the two things that you can do is you can make it so you basically have unlimited ability to serve up pages in terms of speed, and you can make it so that it's fast from anywhere in the world. And bless me. All right, so let's go ahead and turn on CloudFront. So the way we're going to do that is we need to figure out our URL. And I can't remember if I need to copy that or not. We're going to say the origin domain is going to be where is the website being served from. So first off, you could do this in a number of different ways, but we need where our bucket is, and it's right here, of course. But if we needed to remind ourselves of that, we could come back over here under properties, go to the bottom and copy it. We now have our URL. Let me open up another web console tab. And we want to make this thing served up even more efficiently. So I will type in CloudFront content delivery network globally. I want to create a new distribution. And where do I want it served from? I want it served from this right here. And let's see if there's anything else I want to type in. Let's go ahead and just look at this and see if there's anything else. Well, it just says, click that, enter in the URL. So I wanted you to note that you could set up some firewall settings at the level of the content delivery network if you wanted to. So one of the big ones is WAF, Web Application Framework. Okay, so just noting you could do that if you wanted to. This thing is highly configurable. Looks like it forces us to make that choice. Oh, here's another one. Where do we want this pushed to? Like push it to everywhere in the world. I'm gonna just say a little bit less. I think it'll work a little fast. You could do any of these options, but if you push it to basically every place on earth that AWS has servers, then it's going to take a little bit longer. And this already takes a few minutes. So I'll just say I'm going to limit mine for this video, and I don't think I need to do anything else. So I'll say create distribution, and it says you've supposedly successfully created, and it says deploying. And so I'm going to close these messages. This is going to take forever. It's going to update this message from time to time. And this is going to be the URL that we will use when it's all done. Right now, if I click on that and I post it over here, it says site can't be reached. Let's see, your connection is not secure. Oh, interesting. At any rate, it is not available right now. And so let me just go back and just check something really quick. usually I would set it to go over HTTPS. So I'm a little surprised that that little copy paste link um, didn't maybe have that in it. Oh, no, it does. All right, good enough. All right, so reload, still not there. All right, so I'm gonna wait like I'm gonna pause the video, wait 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll come back just to verify that it is working properly. So with that, I find my recording and pause. Okay, it still says it's deploying, but I'm within about 4 minutes of when I initially clicked to start the distribution, and I went to the URL that they gave me, and this is working at this point. So whatever places are closest to me where they're deploying this website, um, it has made some of it out there at this point. But there are multiple locations across the world where this website is being deployed to, and it hasn't made it to everywhere. At some point, this will go from deploying to deployed, and then it'll be basically accessible everywhere in the world at that URL. Okay, well, since we are done, let's go ahead. Well, we are done. So let's go ahead and clean up our resources at this point. So one of the things I want to do is I want to click on this. So I went to CloudFront again, clicked on distributions, and it's still deploying this. And I'm going to click on disable. Yes, disable. All right, and then um, I'm going to click on, now it doesn't seem to be ready yet, but at some point when it finishes, I will be able to click uh, delete. So I think because it wasn't done deploying and all that, it needs to finish up with whatever it's doing. And then at some point, I will be able to click delete. Let's go ahead and just jump ahead to the next steps, because remember, this is backed up by an S3 bucket. So I know that it took 2 to 4 minutes to get done. Oh, another thing I should mention is that whether you're using CloudFront or you're using S3, you can just look up really quickly on the web for little tutorials that say, hey, if you register a domain name like paradisedonutcompany.com, you can use that instead of this funky S3 bucket URL, or you can use, again, your URL rather than this funky one. So it's relatively easy to set up so that you can just redirect a real domain name to this. It's fairly trivial, but I'm not going to buy a domain name for the purpose of this video. Okay, so some other things that we want to do is we want to clean that up. Eventually, when it's all done, as it goes from gets to enabled and then you disable it and then delete it, you can eventually click on it and delete. Let's go ahead and go over to S3. You have to, like I said before, you have to empty the bucket before you can delete it, and then you can delete the bucket. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, show me the list of buckets. And this is the one that I'm using for my website. I want to say empty it. And this time I'm supposed to type in permanently delete, copy, empty. All right, I will exit this page. I will click here and I will say delete. And this time I have to copy in the name of the bucket, delete the bucket. Goodbye, bucket. All right, let's go ahead back to our CloudFront page. If I reload this, click, nope, it still doesn't let me delete, but sometime within the next 5 to 15 minutes, this will all be sorted out and I will be able to click that, and then we are done. So I hope this helps you in some of the things that you will be doing in your future. It's been my pleasure. Have a good one.